Welcome to this workshop on advanced Microsoft Word for researchers. My name is Jawad Hashim. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Family Medicine at the College of Medicine and Health Sciences at the UAE University. And it's my pleasure to be your host today for this brief workshop. My goal is to give you an inside look at some of the advanced features in Microsoft Word and things that I have found useful while writing research articles. So it doesn't cover everything because Word is, of course, a fairly extensive program, but it does cover a lot of things that you may not be aware of and could help improve your productivity in writing articles. So let's get started. This is an early version of Word. It used to be available on DOS with the text-based interface. I don't remember using it, but I have been using Word in its very early versions and maybe for about 30 years now. So I've spent quite a lot of time with Microsoft Word, and some of you may remember these early versions without the ribbon interface, which has been recently introduced a few years ago. So it used to have a standard toolbar, and you could still do a lot of things. I think the basic functionality has remained the same, while a lot of new features have been added. But it is the world's most popular word processing program, and it has a lot of features. It has developed a lot, and Microsoft continues to add new functionalities to it. There are alternatives to it, including OpenOffice, LibreOffice, and WPS word processing, as well as Google Docs and a lot of other online apps. But Word remains a standard, and it is certainly the by far most popular. You know that you can get a free copy of Microsoft Word through your university account. Just sign in or log in with your university ID, email ID, and password, and you can install Office 365 on, I think, up to 5 PCs. Also, note that Word is also available as a mobile app, so you can use Microsoft Word on your smartphone or tablet or iPad. And these versions are actually free to use. So I think Microsoft is fairly generous with its licensing with Microsoft with Word. Okay, so I've divided the workshop into 4 parts, and we'll start with the essentials. And in this part, we will discuss how to increase your writing productivity, some workflow tips when using Word, and customizing Word. So I think the starting point should be a good ergonomic workspace. You should be comfortable when sitting. We tend to sit for a long time while writing, and you can get lost in your academic work without realizing that you've been sitting for a long time and maybe stressing your back and your neck. We certainly see a lot of patients with back problems and neck problems. And once these start developing, it's hard to get rid of them. So it's better to start with a good ergonomic posture, with a good chair. You should have the monitor at your eye level or just below. Remember to take breaks at every 25 minutes. You could use a timer or you could use a smartwatch. Now, some of these smartwatches have a built-in reminder. If you're sitting for too long, you get a reminder that you need to get up and move around and stretch. Certainly, you should not be using a laptop, uh, and um, laptop screens are not suited for long use. Uh, Always, if you do want to use a laptop, connect it to a monitor and a full-size keyboard, so you can work comfortably. Other things you should have in your environment is a clock, which is easily visible, not a digital clock, but an analog clock, some pens, paper, and a writing pad, and of course, water to hydrate it. I'm going to start with some tips that you might find useful. One important thing is to use good file names. So file names can help you keep track of and to be able to find your files avoid file names that are cryptic. It's hard to know sometimes when you're writing that file name like thesis or project new, you know what it means, but after a few days or weeks, it can become very difficult, and especially if you send the file as an attachment, the person receiving it may have a hard time keeping track of it. Also, don't use the word final in your file name, because as you may be aware, it always happens that you have a new final version, and sometimes the final version becomes the old version, and the final version is edited by others. So there is a better way to do this, and let me share my system. There are a lot of systems on the internet for naming your files and folders. So let's start with folders. Folder names should be only 1 to 2 words, so very brief folder names. Each folder may contain subfolders or files, but not a mix of both. So you may have seen people with large folders with a mixture of subfolders and files. That's hard to understand. And each folder should have hold less than 10 items, so it's easy to scan. If you have more than 10 items, then you should make subfolders and divide the items. So you should not have a folder containing hundreds of files. So for example, you can have a folder called research, a subfolder within it, or multiple subfolders within research, each containing one study or one topic, such as diabetes. And all your diabetes studies should be under the diabetes folder. And within the diabetes folder, you could have a folder for each study, say, for example, the prevention study. So notice that each folder name is short, 1 to 2 words, and easy to navigate. File names, on the other hand, should be long and descriptive. So you should include a date in the file name using the format year, month, date, include a version number with a leading 0. So you can have up to 99 versions. And then specify the content type, such as what the file contains itself. So a generic meta tag as the first maybe letter word of the file. So for example, you have theses version 3, dated, and the title of the thesis, and maybe some comments within the file name itself. Another example could be a grant proposal version 4, and then just a descriptive title of the study, but in brief. So this will keep your folder system manageable, and you will be able to find your files easily. Maybe if you have all your files on the desktop, spend an afternoon reorganizing your files using this system. Okay. Um, Another tip is to tile your windows side by side. As you can see on the screen, this is a screenshot showing Microsoft Word on the left side and a browser on the right side. Both have been tiled using the Windows and arrow key. So if you hold down the Windows key on your keyboard and hit the left arrow or the right arrow, you can snap a window to the left or right side. And that way you can tile windows easily without having to, micro drag the corners of each window. This is very handy when you're writing, so you can read from, say, a research article while you're writing, and you're able to cite articles easily. So a very basic and important tip. This is extremely important. I hope all of you know how to touch type. I still see some professors who are typing with 2 fingers, the index finger of each hand, looking at the keyboard. They're still productive, but there's a big difference between typing with just 2 fingers and touch typing. Notice that in touch typing, all 4 fingers rest on the keyboard, and the index finger of each hand rests on specific keys F and J. And F and J have a small ridge on the keyboard. If you feel your keyboard, F and J keys, you will feel a small ridge at the lower part of the key. And that's how you can locate the keys without even looking at the keyboard. So initially, put your hands like this and look at the keyboard while you're typing. And then eventually, you will not need to look at the keyboard. Alternatively, you can search online for a typing tutor website and practice and learn how to type. Next important tip here are what's called keyboard shortcuts. As you're aware, most of you are using keyboard shortcuts like Control Z to undo. So these are controlled with either the Control key or the Alt key or the Windows key. Um, we used to have a row of function keys at the top row. Unfortunately, with most keyboards, especially laptops, these keys have now been used for things like changing the volume or changing the playback of the media. So uh, that makes the function keys less usable, although Microsoft Word still has a lot of shortcuts for function keys. So quick question quiz for you. What will happen if I press the control key down and hit the plus key? Let's see if anyone can answer this in the message box. The message here for you, no, it's not font size. Good try though. That's what I would think too with the control plus. Uh, no, it's not magnify. I'm talking about Microsoft Word. It is not upper letters also. But those are, again, it's kind of intuitive to think the plus sign, but it's actually no, it's not zoom. It is subscript. So, like if you're writing H2O, the two you want a subscript in, say, in a chemical formula, you would use control plus. And if you hit control shift plus, it will be superscript. For example, x squared. Then the square part, the two, if you want to superscript, you have control plus shift plus plus. That will make it a superscript. So these are shortcuts that are beyond the basic shortcuts. And I think if you can spend some time in memorizing these shortcuts, practicing it, maybe printing it out and keeping it next to your keyboard, it will improve your productivity significantly. So I think a lot, I'm sure all of you are familiar with most of these basic word shortcuts like cut, copy, paste, print, new, open, close, find, undo, of course. Redo, some of you may not be familiar, Control Y. If you undo accidentally too much, then you can use Control Y to redo or undo the undo. Um, the split window I will show you later on, and then Control Home, Control End to go to the beginning or end of document. And Control Save, of course, is a lifesaver. Okay, so now let me shift to Word and show you some of my key uh, shortcuts and the basic interface layout of Word. Um, so I hope you can see Microsoft Word on the screen. So Microsoft Word has this modern interface with the ribbon. You can see the ribbon is at the top part. You can hide the ribbon by clicking on this arrow, and then you can return it, uh, and you can choose either just showing the tabs or the tabs and the commands. Some of the new features that are available on the Home tab, I'll just go over quickly. An important feature that I like is clear formatting. So this can also be accessed via control space. So for example, if I have text uh, that has a lot of formatting applied to it, and I want to quickly remove the formatting, um, what I can do is simply hit this button, clear all formatting, and it will returns the text back to its original unformatted um, form. Um, Notice also that you have these small buttons for each group within the ribbon that you can expand and access some of the advanced features. Um, there is a dictate available now in Office, and I haven't tried it much, but it can improve your productivity. And finally, editor is available to check spelling and grammar. Um, an important tip that I want to share with you today is to turn on grammar editing. So grammar editing, you can turn on grammar checking rather. You can turn on using the file and then options. So we have file and then options at the bottom, and just go to proofing. And then if you look at the grammar and refinements, most of the time it is just grammar. That is by default, but remember to turn on grammar with refinements. This will provide you with feedback on your writing style. And if you check the settings here, you can, there are a lot of the settings may be unchecked. So for example, this setting here, make sure that you turn on these settings. Some of them are useful for academic writing. So for example, use of um, colloquial verb phrases, use of I or we or cliches. So a lot of grammar checking, for example, first person references sometimes are not recommended in research writing, like I did this. So you can have Word flag this and show this in your grammar checking. This is almost as good as some of those online apps and tools such as Grammarly that can help check your writing style. Some other options I wanted to show you in the options, you can change the mode. Um, for example, you can change it to a dark mode. You can customize what's called the quick access toolbar. So let me show you some of the things that I have kept on my quick access toolbar. This is the toolbar at the top of the Word window. So it's right at the top. And what I put up there are things like save as, email a document. So if I click on it, it just quickly um, attaches the document to a blank email in Outlook. I have the ruler available, so I can just click on the ruler button here and then it will display the ruler. Yeah, the settings are different, and the settings, some of the settings will not be available in Word 2016. I'm using Office 365, and as you know, Microsoft rolls out changes on a continuous basis. So no longer we have a version. So this is not Microsoft Word 2019. This is actually Office 365, and new versions keep, new features keep being added via the internet without even you knowing it. So some of this will look different if you're using an older version of Word. So also for navigation pane, I've added this. And what you can do is search for a command from whichever tab that you like, for example, the View tab. And then you can say, um, you can add that command by clicking on the Add button here. Um, yeah, for Mac users, you may have different functions. So I have like things like view table grid lines. I can toggle table grid lines. And I have the speak, so I can select a piece of text and I can ask Microsoft Word um, to speak it out. So it's like somebody reading your article back to you. Okay. Um, Let me show you some things on the Insert tab. So Insert tab has, your table, your pictures, shapes that you can insert, charts. I always make charts using Microsoft Word and not using SPSS or Excel. Screenshot, I find it very useful. So you can, I usually use the screen clipping to insert a past part of the screen. I don't use the Windows shortcut print screen. Add-ins have been disabled in the university Microsoft Word. So if you have your own license, you can get a lot of nice add-ins, including grammar checking. Um, of course, you are familiar with using headers and footers. So I'll not discuss that. In terms of inserting page number, I like to use the current position option and just the plain page number. So I position the cursor within the footer and then I use the current position option. Of course, you can insert function equations using Microsoft Word, and you can use very nice formatted functions, equations. So this is also highly recommended instead of just you inserting equations using plain text. And then symbols, you can insert things like the Greek letters like eta here, and then also the degree sign, for example, a degree centigrade or degree Fahrenheit. Let me just move on to layout. Make sure that the size is A4 size for your paper, not letter size. Sometimes the default size is letter. Unless you're sending a document to the US, most of the time you're using A4 size. Margins should be exactly what is recommended in the journal article. If you're not sure, then the normal margins, which are about 1 inch, um, will be are recommended. So let me cover that page numbering in what's called a thesis template. So let me switch. So I'm using the thesis template, which is available to you via the university website from College of Graduate Studies. And I've modified, simplified it a little bit, but you can see on this that um, it has page numbers starting not from the first page, but from the second page. And you may sometimes have to do that on your own documents. And to see that, show what they've done is if you click on the show hide formatting marks um, and go to the um, footer header rather, you can see that they have selected um, what's called different first page. So um, the the first page has a different header footer. So if I uncheck it, um, you can see that the page numbers will change, and they have you now have a page number on the first page as well. Um, so that is how you would change the omit the first page number. Okay. Um, Let me turn off the formatting marks. Okay. All right. Some of the times what will happen is if you change the language, especially if your language you've set it as Arabic, then you may encounter some errors. So just double check if you start having weird formatting that you're not selected Arabic as the default language if you're writing an English article. Um, okay, so that was a basic overview of Microsoft Word. Another thing that I wanted to show you was the references tab. This you can insert references and citations using a different style within Microsoft Word, but this is not recommended because you will be having to enter each reference title, author names manually within its bibliography database. A better way to do is to use reference manager such as Zotero or EndNote Web. Okay, so now we go to the text formatting and some text formatting conventions and standards using styles and then templates. Okay, so here is a sample article that I will show you some formatting features in Microsoft Word. Um, one of the important things that I want you to notice, and this is sometimes I'll zoom in to show this, is that um, between full stop and then the next start of the next sentence should be only one space, especially after commas and semicolons. So sometimes students will enter two spaces, and that is not considered acceptable formatting. Um, the other thing is title case. You can change the title to a title case using this button here on the Home tab. So you can change it to uppercase, capitalize each word. And if you do capitalize each word, check that the small words that are linking words are not capitalized. So again, you should check your journal style to see if uh, um, what they prefer. And a good way to is yeah, I will cover track changes later on. A good way to do that is to look at a recent article from a journal. So small things like even the tables. So your is there a full here or a colon or just a tab? Whether the table itself is bold and the rest of the title of the table is not bold. So those small things you should check from a recent article of your target journal. Okay. Generally, you're not recommended to apply um, a style text formatting directly. So um, your text you should not bold this or select a piece of text and apply these font formatting or even paragraph formatting. The recommended way is to use styles. So styles are, a collection or a special format that you can apply to a text. And you should not use the normal style. So normal style is the base style for all other styles and should not be used in text formatting. The way to do that, proper formatting is to use the body text style and then the body text first indent. You can see that the first line is indented slightly if I use the body text first indent. Generally, the first paragraph, you don't want to indent the first line, whereas from the second paragraph onwards, you would indent the first line. And for headings, you should use the heading um, styles such as heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3. I would not recommend using more than 3 levels of heading. So here you have heading 1, as the methods and heading 2 as a subheading within this section. Notice that there is increased spacing. So a good way to do that is to modify these styles. So right click on the style and then click modify. And then here I have heading 1. I can modify it using the format button at the bottom here. And I can change the paragraph. Notice that I've kept 24-point spacing before and a 0-point spacing with double line spacing for this major heading, heading 1. For heading 2, again, I can right click and show you what are the settings that I have. Again, I click right click and click on modify and then format and then paragraph. So I have kept the 12-point before spacing and a 0-point after spacing, and again, double line spacing. And again, using a very standard format like font like Times New Roman and font size 12. So a lot of journals don't really care much about the fonts because they will change everything. But your headings and the text formatting should be consistent from paragraph to paragraph. And the best way to do that is to use styles rather than applying direct formatting using the fonts or the bold and italic over here on the font area. Okay. Um, and it sometimes if you have inappropriate formatting, it's sometimes tempting to use the format painter, which is over here. You can use it to copy the format and then apply it to another piece of text. This is again not the best way to do it because it doesn't, it changes the direct font formatting. A better way is to apply the style itself. Another thing I want to show you is that turn on in the paragraph options, turn on the widow orphan control and keep it next. So these options will prevent your heading to be on the last line of a page and the rest of the text on the next page. So it will keep your heading with its next paragraph that it is heading itself. One advantage of using headings is that you can use the navigation pane. You can click view and then click on navigation pane here, and it will show all the headings in your article. And that's a quick way then to navigate to each section. Um, so you quickly can move to a part of the document, especially in a thesis, which can be a fairly long document. Um, if you're sometimes the formatting becomes very complex, you can use the show formatting, and then use the styles dialog box. So I click on this arrow here in the styles area, and I can see what styles are available. And then you can click on this styles inspector, and it will show you what the current formatting is and what is the text level formatting. So if anybody has applied any other formatting to that, this can help you resolve some of the formatting problems. You can also click the text and just clear formatting using this button here, clear all formatting. And this will change it back to normal and remove any formats that have been applied. And then you can reapply the body text format. Okay, another feature that I find useful is the split screen. So under the View tab, go to look at the split, and here now you can look at two parts of the document simultaneously. Sometimes this is useful in looking at your references while you're writing the article. So this will help you to check for if your references are correct, and especially if you're using numeric references. It's a good idea to use author ear format initially when you're writing your first draft of the article, so you know exactly which reference that is, and then you can change it to the number format if it's required by the journal. You can also, while you're writing, hide the ribbon, so you can focus on your article. There is also a focus mode that allows a full screen to you can focus on just writing the article. That's very helpful to um, uh, remove distractions on your screen. Okay. Another feature I want to show you is the find feature. What I use the find is to make sure that I have quoted all the figures and tables. So if I type the figure, it shows me that I have cited figure one. Um, and if I change that to table, the table two, it shows me that I have cited table two in my text. So make sure all your figures and tables are cited in the text of your article. Another thing that I like to do is to save the article as a template. So if I like, I've used this article and it's nicely formatted, I'll just save it as a template. So go to file and then save as just change the file name and save it as a template, and then you can use that for your future documents. Sometimes the journals have special requirements for citations. For example, if you're citing this um, and sometimes they want a superscript, then the full stop has to be before um, the citation. And then, you have to remove the citation and full stop over here and then change it to superscript using Zotero. So that kind of work, it can be automated using what are called macros. And I'll just quickly show you how to record a macro. So you need to enable the developer tab. Sorry. Um, as you can see, I have a developer tab open here. What you can do is click and go to File and then Options, and then Customize Ribbon, and make sure that the developer tab is enabled. And in the developer tab, you can look at the macros available. So you can save your macros here and then use them. So for example, paste as plain text, and then you can assign a keyboard um, um, or even a button at the on the quick access toolbar. For example, let me show you how to record a macro to say save as PDF. So I'll click on record macro and I'll give it a name. You cannot have any spaces in the name. Just save as PDF format. And I can assign it as a button on the toolbar. So save as PDF format, I add it to the quick access toolbar. Um, I already have a save as PDF, but I'll give you a demo here. So here I can modify and change the button itself and change the name of the macro display name. So, and then click OK. And I'll just go. And now that you can see that the mouse cursor has changed to with a recording sign on it. And I will go to the file menu and do whatever steps are needed. So save as, and then change it to a PDF format, and then just click save. Um, and, it will show up as a new window with the PDF format. And then if I go back to Word, I will click on stop recording. And then I have a macro that, I can use to record, save as PDF with one click. So you can look at your macros even in Visual Basic. So if I go and look at that save as PDF and click on edit, then I can see what has been saved in Visual Basic, and you can then make some small changes and tweak the changes to modify the macro. Okay, I can see some questions. Let me keep the questions to the end. So here's a question for you guys. It's like a poll. I wish I could do a poll in Zoom. But what I've noticed is that we tend to spend a lot of time with Microsoft Word, and it really is helpful if you can learn some of these shortcuts and productivity tips that will enhance your productivity. So moving on to tables and figures. Let me show you some tips on formatting tables and inserting graphs and figures. Um, Switching back to, okay, so a lot of journals are now okay with having tables at the end of the article. So and you don't have to submit the table as a separate file. And typically, your table one is your baseline table. So you have some baseline demographics uh, of your study. And notice that the table style does not have any vertical lines. So if you click on the table design tab, there is a style that has this plain table too, and that works well for academic formatting. And I notice that I have just the header row selected. I don't have a first column selected or banded or banded rows. So those things are unselected, just the header row, and there are no vertical lines in the table. I can show you the grid lines, and actually the table has two columns, but it is not visible without the grid line. Notice that the second row here, the text has been shifted, and I did that using tabs. So the way to do that is using pressing Control Tab, because if you just press the Tab key, it just the cursor moves on or selects the next cell in the table. So the way to do that is press the Control key down and then hit the Tab key, and that way you can align sub rows nicely, showing a title row and then sub rows under it. The numeric column has been right aligned. So if you go to layout, you can click on the right alignment or on the home tab on the right alignment. Um, so that's one way to, format your table so it looks professional. You don't have to do double spacing if the journal doesn't specify it. So you can fit your table on one page rather than on two pages. Here's another table. Again, I have specified key values. It has um, a footnote with an asterisk sign. So all these things vary from journal to journal. and you should try and look at a recent article from the journal and see what they have done in their final formatting. So sometimes the top row is not italics, it's just bold, or it's not bold and it is just italics. So all those fine things, if you can do that, it's worth it because the journal editors will notice that you have taken the time to follow the journal format down to the letter. So I would, highly recommend fine tuning your articles based on the specific journal that you're sending. Okay, moving on to figures. I now make all my figures in Microsoft Word, the charts especially. For lab images or other photographs, you certainly have to submit that as a separate file. Sometimes I embed the file image in Microsoft Word and also submit it as a separate file. But in any case, for graphs and charts, Microsoft Word has better fine-tuned, control than SPSS and you don't have to switch to Excel to insert the chart. So if you just insert the chart to the insert menu and then chart, and you have a lot of options. Most of the time, you will be using either bar chart or column chart. So those are the two. I don't recommend using pie charts in academic articles, and certainly not 3D. So avoid using any kind of 3D, such as 3D columns, because they are not considered academically appropriate. So it should be just two-dimensional, either column or bar chart. And then, you can add find things like options like error bars. You can insert uh, the specific values for each row or column based on your data. So if you go to chart design, let me just show you, you can edit the data here or in Excel, you can change chart type. Keep your chart as simple as possible. So notice that there are no bright colors um, and there is no three dimension. The axis starts at 0 and all the labels are easy to read and have been done within Word. So if you want to change this label, again, you would go to Edit Data and then click on Edit Data and you can change the exact labels itself. In terms of fine tuning the chart appearance, you can uh, go to the Format tab and then just select any item and then you can double click and the options will appear. So for example, by default, the plot area may have a border around it, which does not look nice. So this border should not be there. So, you just select the chart area and then um, double click on it and then no line. So now the chart area has been done. So I generally use light gray for the axis lines so that they don't stand out too much. Again, a lot of it is trial and error. So for example, changing these axis values, you have to click on these axis options and maybe, change some of the default values. So for example, I've changed the major unit to 5 here. It could be 2, and then you have the x-axis labels accordingly. Um, so again, play around with it, but try to match the journal style that is you're aiming for. Just one thing that I want to mention also that in Word you can have some basic calculations. So if you go to table layout, you have a formula option, and the formula option allows you to do some basic calculations such as sum about. Obviously, if you have a more complex data and you want to do real calculations, uh, you should use the Excel options that are more powerful. But Word also allows you to do some basic sorting and calculation. Um, okay, just a quick thing about the Word tables that if you do calculations, just double check sometimes if there is a blank row in the column, then only only certain rows will be included in the calculation. So I have been hit with that. So just double check all the calculations. And if there are blank rows, you may want to just type a zero and then make it white text so it doesn't show. And then the addition and calculations will work accordingly. Okay, now I think some of you had questions about using track changes and sharing. So we'll discuss collaborative writing now. Um, and in this section, we will discuss saving the document in the cloud using track changes and then using some of the grammar and usage options. So, you have access to OneDrive, either to university or any Hotmail or Outlook email account. And again, I would encourage you to organize your files in your OneDrive so it's neat. And you may have like just uh, 5 or 6 folders and then subfolders to organize your stuff. And then keep a backup copy of your documents on OneDrive. So here's, you can, if you click on the back stage or the file menu in Word, you come up with this uh, sharing options, and then you can click on OneDrive UA University to save it to the cloud. Once it's saved in the cloud, you need an internet connection, obviously, and if you lose the connection, then Word will not synchronize your changes until the connection is restored. So one option is to work on your computer if you have an unreliable connection and save the file on your local hard disk and then save a copy on OneDrive. But if you have a reliable connection and you want to just save it on OneDrive, that's okay also. But in either case, you should always keep one copy on your computer hard disk in case you lose the connection with OneDrive and you need to work on a file urgently. So that's the first step. You have to save a document onto the cloud to be able to share it. So once the article has been saved on the cloud, you can click on the share button here and then um, you can then enter the email of any person that you want to share the article with. Um, and then all of you can work on the document in a collaborative fashion. It is great if you're working with a supervisor or if you have multiple co-authors. However, not all people are comfortable with working online. Some of them will edit it and then send it back to you as an email attachment. So, for example, if I want to share it with, say, the dean, and it will all the university email addresses will come up, and then you can just, click share and then send, and then you can just send article. So some people are not comfortable with it, and then you have to make sure that your you're keeping all the changes up to date, and then be very careful that if you have multiple authors and each one is making changes on their own locally saved document, that can cause a lot of problems. So what I do in that case is just send it out the article to one person at a time. So it takes longer, but if they've made the changes, then I send it to the next person. If we prefer to do the old-fashioned way using email attachments. So once I send the article, I click on the review. Before I send the article, rather, I click on the review tab and then turn on track changes. So you can see the track changes button is now highlighted. And you can also lock the change tracking with a password. So you can apply a password so people cannot turn off the track changes. And now if I type something, it will highlight, of course. And one thing that I find useful is to view the article without markup. So none of that distracting red underline. So I can work on the article as if the track changes are not on, and I can continue working on it, and then just show all markup um, so that I know what changes I've made or what changes somebody else has made. You can also use the reviewing pane uh, to show what has been inserted and who did what changes. So this is very useful if you have multiple authors working on the same article. You can, of course, then accept changes individually, um, and then you have the final version for submitting to the journal. Notice that you can also look at versions, Word saved versions. You can compare two versions of a document. If people have sent you as an attachment by email, then you can use this option, the compare option, and you can then see what changes were made compared to the version that you sent. Um, Notice again that the editor button is also available here in the review, and sometimes you have to turn on the editor button to do the spell check. So this is very important. Sometimes spell checking is turned off in a document, and even though you make some spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes, nothing is highlighted. So for that reason, you should always, before submitting, send do an editor check. And you can see a lot of suggestions. There are no spelling errors in this document, but there are 8 grammar errors. Another feature that I find useful is the thesaurus or synonyms. So I can double click on word, right click, and choose a synonym that gives me some, other ways, especially if I'm paraphrasing from another article. I don't want to use the same words to avoid plagiarism. So I use synonyms, and sometimes also if I can't find the best word, um, I will I use synonyms to help me with my writing. Okay. Let me just review if anyone has any burning questions at this point. So, what is one definition of an academic is someone who spends more time with Word than with their family. It's unfortunate, but it does happen, and um, it's a program that you use a lot, probably more than any other program, maybe than the browser. So it is important that you know all the features and settings and options to use it in an optimal fashion. Some other tips that I want to share with you regarding research writing. One is to look for what are called reporting guidelines. Um, yeah, that's a great question. Let me just extract the word for sharing comments. So uh, comments is again a great feature that you can use, especially in collaborative writing, especially if you have a supervisor or co-authors who are working on the same document. So you can either select a word or a paragraph or just position your cursor where you want the comment and then click on new comment. And then um, type in your comment. And it is important that you are signed in to Microsoft Word. So when you're signed in, then it will show your name when you type your comment, and people can reply to it. And you can also resolve a comment if you reply to if you've replied to it already or you've acted on the comment. And then if you click on the resolve button, it will make it dim. So you have a threaded comment that has been dimmed, it has been handled. You can also hide comments in a document. From the view tab, maybe. Maybe it's resolved. That's why. Let me just use. You can select individual comments to delete. Um, I think if you change this to no markup, then yeah, your comments are hidden. So then you can again go back to writing uh, writing without the comments visible. And if you want to go back to the comments, then click on all markup and your comments are visible. I use comment features a lot, especially when I'm writing in a collaborative fashion. And then it's nice to have feedback on the comments and a good learning experience for everyone. Okay, so just wanted to share a tip with you guys on reporting guidelines. These are very useful, especially the Equation Network for clinical for studies in medicine and animal studies. You have a lot of these checklists that you can use and think for say observational studies or systematic reviews. And some of the journals are now requiring that you attach these checklists as supplementary materials or supplementary appendix. So this is the website for this operator-network.org. And they also have some general tools for guidance on scientific writing. So some interesting articles and the courses even for scientific writing. One of this is the academic phrase bank. I just wanted to show that to you. Um, called the Manchester Phrase Bank, and it's available. If you just search online for Manchester Phrase Bank or Academic Phrase Bank, you will come to this homepage, and you can see that it has sections on the introduction, describing methods, reporting results, discussing your findings, and then writing conclusions. And the good thing is that this is great if you're stuck and you want to write in an academic fashion. So um, it your writing appears proper for the context, and you can actually even copy paste these phrases. So that is okay, and it is not considered plagiarism. So you can improve your writing quality by referring to this academic phrase bank. Also print out, and read articles on how to write articles, especially for your field. Certainly, you should print out articles on the area of your research and read them not on screen but on paper, and then highlight them and look at the writing style. Um, some style issues, you should vary your sentence length so it is interesting to read. Don't start all sentences with the same words. Avoid weak words like there is, there was, this is, the is, was are weak words, and you should avoid too much use of passive voice. You should achieve some flow and argument exposition. So your paragraphs, are linked to each other. So the last sentence in one paragraph is linked to the first sentence in the next paragraph. There is like a story in your article, especially in the introduction and the discussion. You should proofread on paper, so don't proofread on screen. If you've written your thesis, wait for a few days and then print it out and read it on paper after a break of 1 or 2 so you're fresh. And then request someone else to proofread who is not part of the team. So they can sometimes pick out mistakes that are not visible to you. And then finally, write every day without being a perfectionist. So try to get some writing output every day instead of waiting for the last day of the deadline to finish. So that way, even though your writing is not perfect, you have the opportunity to keep on revising it. So even the best writers, they revise their articles many times, and they have, they are not able to write a good draft on their first draft. So in summary, learn to use touch typing, use keyboard shortcuts, use a phrase bank, enable grammar checking in your Microsoft Word options, use templates. Just save your article as a template and then you can reuse it. Use styles to format text instead of using direct formatting such as bold or italic. Follow formatting used in the target journal. Just print out the most recent article and then copy the formatting styles from there. Save in the cloud and then use the share button in Microsoft Word to work with other people on the same document. But before you do that, turn on track changes so you can see what others have done on the document. And then you can use macros for repetitive tasks to if you have a big document and you need to make small changes in multiple locations. You can either use search and replace or you can use macros. With that, I'll stop and I'll take any questions. Who has a question that I can answer? There's a question about Zotero. Let me just quickly answer that if I can. Um, so in the Zotero, if you if you want your references to be linked together, the way to do that is to select multiple sources option. So for example, over here, if I go to Zotero and add citation, um, notice that I am using multiple sources. So there is a button for multiple sources in the Zotero insert option. But that's not the topic for today's workshop. So if there are any other questions, I'd be glad to answer. I think with that, I think we can close the workshop. Rahman, if you want to take over and
Hello everyone, this is Hira. Uh,
yes,
yes, if I will just wind up on the behalf of Abdur Rahman. Is there any question? Please fill out this Google form before leaving. And thank you so much, Professor, for giving such a nice workshop.
thank you everyone for coming. And remember, I have another workshop tomorrow at I think it's 11 o'clock in the morning on Jamovi. So if you're interested in statistical analysis, please do join me tomorrow at 11 o'clock for a workshop on Jamovi. Thanks. I always enjoy talking with graduate students. And I'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank, thank you so much.